While we have choral symphonies and 40-part quartets, the birds have private arias and passionate duets, with songs to tell arrival of in no uncertain terms, and sometimes, on a rainy day, a requiem for worms. But while we worry over pitch or whether we're in time, the melody that they produce is perfectly sublime. For though they've never heard of tone or sharps or minor thirds, what takes a singer years to learn comes naturally to birds. Around the world in 80 birds. It is an honor to present to you, thanks to your generosity, the Boston Foundation champions civic leadership, that critical element of humanity, the concept of our brother's keeper. The Nourishment Project is about joyous curiosity and being part of something much larger than ourselves. Here are some of the references that inform this presentation. Vivaldi's Four Seasons, that was playing in the background, are based on sonnets that are odes to nature. Each of the four concertos is accompanied by a sonnet describing the atmosphere of the season. Birds are given pride of place as they celebrate the season's arrival. The celebrations get interrupted by the storm, and then their festive rejoicing gets picked back up again. The depiction of the flock arrives in a musical flurry of trills, which are rapid bits of melody and chirp like repeated notes that chime in from across the ensemble. Birds led harmony to symphonies are Messiaen, Vaughan Williams, many of them you've probably heard at the Boston Symphony. Beethoven's Pastoral is a gentle meander through woods and countryside apart from the storm that downpours over the land in the fourth movement. There are many allusions to nature, not least birdsong. First on the scene is the nightingale, represented by the flute. The oboe as quail makes an appearance, followed by the cuckoo, played by the clarinets. There are countless other examples: Saint-Saëns the aviary, the cellist Pau Casals and his Song of the Birds. Another very popular cellist from almost a century ago was Beatrice Harrison. Harrison first became aware of the nightingales one summer evening as she practiced her instrument in the garden. As she played, she heard a nightingale answer and then echo the notes of a cello. When this duet was repeated night after night, Harrison persuaded the BBC that it should be broadcast. 19th May 1924 was the first day radio listeners heard a cello playing while nightingales sang live from a Surrey garden. The public reaction was such that the experiment was repeated the next month and then every spring for the following 12 years. In more recent times, there is the American band The Eagles. Eagles, the birds, not the band, appear in numismatics, which is the study of coins and medals. This one from the second, third century BCE, BCE being before current era, has a Celtic Zeus on the obverse and a seated figure holding an eagle on the reverse. Boston has a very famous Celtic bird as well. Birds represented again, this time Nike, the goddess of victory on a chariot, and there's a stork taking flight in her exergue, which is the term for the space or the inscription below the main emblem. A 300 BCE, once again before current era coin with a bird. A clearer version of this is in the 19th century copy from once at the British Museum. The water nymph Trina on the obverse, with Nike on the reverse holding a bird. In ancient times, birds were the standard points of reference for seasons. For agricultural ancestors, the year was quartered: spring, summer, fall, and winter, hence the use of Vivaldi earlier. The European cranes migration were a reference for autumn. They migrated south through the Mediterranean on way to North Africa, usually in mid to late December. The cuckoo was front and center in the Greek play by Aristophanes, The Birds. This is about foolish ideas and fancies, the cloud cuckoo land. Cuckoos were the iconic sound of spring, and thereby, please meet Onin, a contemporary satellite tagged cuckoo who in 2019 through a joint initiative involving Birding Beijing, the British Trust for Anthology, and the Wildlife Science and Conservation Center of Mongolia, made a round trip journey of 16,000 miles from Mongolia to his winter home in Zambia and back again. He traversed 16 countries, facing down ocean crossings and high winds on the way. Five cuckoos had been fitted, and only one came back. The others may have been lost to predators, starvation, storms, exhaustion. Onan had no time to waste as he needed to set up his territory, defending it from competing males, and mate with as many females as possible. Bird migrations are fascinating. Many European swallows spend the winter in Africa, south of the Sahara, in Arabia, and also in the Indian subcontinent. Migrating swallows cover 200 miles a day, mainly during daylight, at speeds of about 70 to 22 miles per hour. These are swallows in America, migrated from Argentina, as if the migration itself isn't hazardous enough, risking storms and exhaustion. It is ignorance that is even deadlier. On May 2nd, 2019, a Sonoma County Public Works Department employee, doing what he thought was routine maintenance, destroyed a swallow colony of over 200 nests on the side of a teen community center. These swallows flew all the way from Argentina to nest in Sonoma County. They do this every year, where they raise their young and then fly all the way back to Argentina at the end of August. This picture of their nests on the side of the community center were a week and a half before the worker mistakenly removed them, thereby destroying 200 nests filled with eggs and chicks. All that energy, all that effort for naught. The employee feels horrible. It's a tragedy all the way around. We've lost touch with nature. Each of these nests has about 1,500 little pellets of mud. So that's about 1,500 trips back and forth from the dairy next door from where they gather mud and build their nests. All gone. There are many types of swallows: cliff swallows, who have nests in the cavities by seaside cliffs. And speaking of sea, birds in ancient times also portended storms. Seagulls deserting the sea foretold stormy weather. That information was critical to the seafaring Mediterraneans, the Greeks and the Romans. For the Greeks and the Romans, dawn was heralded by a chorus of birds. And so, what we use now, watches, electronic devices that precisely subdivides our days into hours and minutes and seconds, the ancients regulated their life between night and day by the circadian rhythms. It was the birds that heralded daytime. The birds included the meadowlark and other familiar sounds that are even familiar to our contemporary ears are the soothing purr of turtle doves, the melody of warblers, the chirping of sparrows and finches. The survival of these small birds through winter verge on the miraculous. Their winter adaptation to a communal, gregarious way of life is dramatically different from the summer months where each joyously defends his own territory. The unmistakable and very recognizable cockerel heralds the day, then and even now. They are depicted across cultures, from Japan Mitsunari's Battle of the Chicken and the Rats, which is displayed not far from where you are currently in Boston, and then across cultures, centuries, and geography, Rooster again adorns the Mohale manuscript. Other books include The Wings of the Dove and The Goldfinch, both a book and a movie. Birds are also sports namesake as well. Football, Philadelphia Eagle. Baseball, Toronto Blue Jays. Basketball, Stanford Cardinals, Alexa Romano showed here. Hockey, the Anaheim Ducks. Speaking of ducks, let's make way for the ducklings. Jack, cack, lack, mac, knack, whack, pack, and quack. And they do make quite the fashion statement, don't they? Fashion again has not eluded the birds. Armani's eagle representing the pinnacle of style, Birds also at the NBC Peacock, and obviously, most appropriately, airlines, both Lufthansa and American Airlines. And almost everyone recognizes the ubiquitous Twitter. The Birds with Tippi Hedren is memorable, and here she is in a gull besieged phone booth. The gulls seem to be organized, working as a team. Mastery of the breeze, the way they seem to hover, truly makes these gray mantle wings and their smooth white breasts remind me of a rather marble bird with a very, very keen cry. And the gulls are reminiscent of another bird, a more land based bird, the secretary bird, a marvel, truly a marvel of nature, because it is the natural predator of the lethal black mamba and the cobra. Her featherless legs mean that there are no blood capillaries to carry the poison into her system. Natural protection against venom. Sadly, these birds have no protection against habitat loss due to development and overgrazing of grasslands. This diverse beauty of eggs symbolize the sheer variety of avians. The Spanish architect Gaudi thought that an egg, the oval, was the perfect shape. Birds can be a metaphor for us, anthropomorphisms, for love, history, passion, economics, politics, arts, and can take your eyes off levels of beauty. The diversity within each species is remarkable. Doves and pigeons are the same species and yet surprise us. The plain pigeon, the same species as the Nicobar pigeon, and just as humans look different by regions, yet we are not extinct. Flora and fauna that have survived evolution cannot survive our aggressive tendencies. These passenger pigeons have been shot to extinction. This emerald beauty is in a precarious position, and this one only slightly better, and hopefully not a symbolic target on this beautiful bleeding heart dove. I coo over all of them. So, history is instructive. The Greeks apparently drenched the feathers of doves with perfume and set them free to flutter around their homes, scenting the air with every beat of their fragrant wings. The recognizable white dove, redolent of biblical narrative, is Picasso's dove. He got them from the artist Matisse. Picasso even named his daughter Paloma, meaning dove. A dove brought Noah an olive branch, announcing the abating of the waters and God's anger. In Western religion, the dove is a sign of hope, purity, and fidelity, the Holy Spirit. That spiritual symbolism was being captured in this origami exhibit at the Washington National Cathedral by the German artist Michael Pendry. Over 2,000 doves appear to fly through the nave, symbolizing peace and resiliency as we reflect on 2020 and look ahead to brighter days. A new chapter to do our part in making a better tomorrow. This exhibition is currently on display, and though most tickets, but not all, appear to be sold out. Doves were associated with the Greek Aphrodite, who is the Roman Venus. Even preceding the Greeks, the Sumerian mother goddess Ishtar was often portrayed holding a pigeon. Aphrodite, also Venus, is portrayed having a chariot pulled by doves, and in Hellenic art, Aphrodite's dove symbolized the pure spiritual aspect of love rather than the physical. These birds symbolize the soul, and the Roman catacombs were called columbarias, dovecotes, the soul returning to the goddess Venus or Aphrodite after death. Here in Dorset, the Athelhampton House has a beautiful 16th century dovecote. More status than religious, the pigeons were prize squabs for the Lord's dining table. The family ate well. Birds have long been status symbols, even now, as we will soon find out. So, in the dovecotes, the environment is dark, safe, and convenient for the pigeons because they emulate caves and cliff faces, their natural breeding grounds. Pigeons are gregarious, so they like high places so that they can keep an eye out for birds of prey. And like bees, pigeons have the freedom to fly away to forage and to return. As previously mentioned, columbarias associated with the Greek Venus, the Greek Aphrodite or the Roman Venus, because they're both the goddesses of love and beauty. That association with beauty is the reason this cosmetic company is called Dove. Dove or pigeons, symbolizing love in the ballet entitled The Two Pigeons, the 20th century choreography by Frederick Ashton. The story is based on the work of the French La Fontaine. Fontaine credited the story to the Eastern Bidpai, which was a mispronunciation of the Indian Vidyapati, which is from the translation of the animal fables from BCE, before current era, called Panchatantra. Pancha means five. So these are the stories that are known as the five treaties. The Persian tales, based on those Sanskrit translations from which this ballet comes, was originally about male bonding. Europeans weren't comfortable and made it about love between a boy and a girl and kept the bird association from the original tale. So Persian, so read Iranian, pigeons appropriate juxtaposition because the Middle East's love of pigeons dissolved many religious and national divisions. Please meet Jawhar, meaning jewel, a pure white female Baghdadi pigeon. Pigeon breeding was practiced across the region as far back as the 8th century, and the best breeders were Syrians until that country descended into civil war. So now pigeons are smuggled in muslin bags across Syria to Lebanon and beyond. These are Hezbollah territories, a Shiite Muslim political group in Lebanon. Hezbollah is branded as a terrorist organization by most European states and United States as well. Politics is married to the idea of freedom, which is so closely associated with birds. So, similarly, pigeon fanciers in Palestine. The passion for racing pigeons is pursued by Arabs and Jews alike. Palestinian birds cross the dry valley below and fly above the separation barriers, places barred to humans, because the birds transcend all this. No walls for them. So, the summary of pigeons and doves could be that they're a food source. Doves allude to love with respect to Aphrodite. Doves in church represent faith. In the Middle East, pigeons are tied to identity and to politics. What remains is the human aspect of economics. So, meet Armando, the $1.42 million pigeon bought by a Chinese man in an online auction bidding war that lasted an hour. Pigeon racing, with its roots in Belgium, now has a global audience. Armando is about 6 years old when this photograph was taken and is used as a breeding pigeon. Has your interest peaked yet? How is the remaining presentation going to be framed? Will it be a story of beauty or biology? Birds like pigeons who can swim underwater, or this long tailed duck here resting in beauty and capable of swimming underwater to depths of 200 feet, or perhaps the biology of hummingbirds and their forked tongues. Or is it a story of architecture? The nests of weaver birds, social weavers shown here from South Africa, or weaver birds from India, perhaps the nests of bee eaters in Uganda, or should it be a story of dance, egrets? Flamingos are also divine dancers. Or maybe a story about flamboyant preening beauties. Will it be a story about gender, equality? The ornithologist John Gould, second in stature for illustrations only to James Audubon, yet it was his wife Elizabeth who did most of the illustrations. Is it a story about collaboration? Mongolia's eagle hunting to feed the nomads, or even more astonishingly, the symbiotic relationship between ravens and wolves. Ravens also known as wolf birds, are found near wolf packs up to 99.7% of the time in winter at Yellowstone National Park. Why do wolves tolerate ravens as dinner companions? Yellowstone studies reveal that when ravens locate injured elk, they call raucously, attracting the attention of the local wolf pack to an easy kill. Ravens can't cut into a carcass, so the wolves tear through the tough hide first. Collaboration. Isn't nature fascinating? Is it going to be a story about human led extinction? Creatures that survive evolution don't survive our arrogance. Birds belonging in Indonesia or in Borneo should not be displayed on a shelf. What is displayed is our crassness, an absolute lack of spirituality, because the Buddha would be horrified by this. This helmeted hornbill head that's been carved intricately depicting him. Carving of the bird's bills for ivory has led to a massive decline in this species. Will it be a story about illegal wildlife trade? These glorious cranes with their wings clipped walk around in private captivity as decorations. Ostentatious wealth and an absolute lack of value displayed on lawns there. And speaking of lawns, chemical fields of emeralds in America's suburbs. Birds often mistake pesticide granules for food, and it is estimated that approximately 7 million wild birds are killed each year due to the use of pesticides by homeowners just to have aesthetic value. Will the presentation be categorized by seabirds, water birds, woodland birds, forest birds, or perhaps the remarkable story about migrations, the bird's enviable eyesights? No. Today's framework pivots on one word: pray. Prey and Pray, starting with Prey, that means hunted or easily deceived. There are many birds of prey, goshawk, tucking in her wings and streaking through the narrow openings at extremely high speed. The elegant ospreys, a time lapse photography of that glorious creature gathering food to feed the family. Hunting, World War dive bombers named after birds, the Blackburn squaw, the Royal Air Force albatross, the actual ones being almost driven to extinction due to long line fishing. Man made on the right and nature made on the left. Sparrowhawk, the 2019 Next Generation Training Jets, red tailed hawk. Since 1995, more than 105,000 bird strikes have killed 27 people. 13 aircrafts have been lost, cost to the Air Force of more than $817 million. Let's just assume all 105,000 birds have died, labeled as collateral damage. Here's the aforementioned red-tailed hawk, the real McCoy that those jets are named after. The Air Force could consider a cost effective solution to protect them inland. Methane flaring, which is a federally mandated practice for disposing of methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas. Methane burners in landfills convert the gas into water and carbon dioxide, which traps less heat in the atmosphere than methane. As the burner's flames shoot out of a tall exhaust pipe, which is also called a stack, they shoot up about 30 feet into the air. They remain colorless, and birds fly directly into them without warning. It's a widespread problem because eagles, kestrels, those red tailed hawks, great horned owls all get singed. Landfills are in remote areas, so hurt birds are missed by caring humans. Putting cages, as was shown in the previous slide, reduces the problem. And because just because the birds aren't endangered yet does not mean they shouldn't be protected. And for our category, prey, Prey, we are focusing on two birds. The first is the falcon. Falconry was a woman's sport in India and also in Iceland. The painted gyrfalcon comes from around that region because they're painted on the right hand side. So the falconry was popular in Italy, as shown in the painting on the right with the Duke of Sforza. This is by Milan. He is the one who had the foresight to plant mulberry trees that started the sericulture, silkworm culture in the Como region, which then gave birth to Italian silk houses like Pucci. So, though these paintings are beautiful, they will really have a hard time competing for your attention versus this photograph. More than 30 hooded falcons on a plane en route to a contest. They needed to be hooded to stay calm. Else, by nature, they will attack that which moves, including the cabin stewards. The tags on their foot match their individual passports. Without these passports, these birds cannot fly on an airplane. That's because of illegal smuggling. Falcons are the symbol of United Arab Emirates. So money is not the issue here. Each plane ticket for a bird is hundreds of dollars, and they only travel business or first class. They are driven to the events where prized falcons compete to catch and bring back prey alive. Falcons are magnificent. Gear falcons can reach 90 miles an hour in a straight path, 130 miles per hour when diving. Peregrine falcons can fly 68 miles per hour horizontally and a staggering 242 miles per hour when diving. Peregrines are one of the fastest animals in the world. Gear falcons can cost $60,000, where top amounts to almost $250,000 each. For in the falconry world, Preston's Cup prize money is about $7 million. So, in context, the International US Open Golf Prize entire payout distribution is $12.5 million. Falconry is a niche sport. When comparing $7 million to almost a well known international $12.5 million payout, falconry is still a very lucrative sport. When not bred, wild falcons are caught during their migrations from Africa from regions near the Arctic. So there are two types of falconry: racing and hunting. Here, a top performer is being rewarded for a good training day. The popularity of falconry in the UAE, United Arab Emirates, has grown so strong that the country has established two specialist hospitals to take care of these magnificent birds: the Dubai Falcon Hospital and the Abu Dhabi Falcon Hospital. So the Bedouins first started using falcons to hunt, and falcons have played a crucial part in the history of UAE. With the scarce desert environment, falcons help Bedouins hunt animals native to the region, such as bustards and curlews. Falcons have been cherished throughout Eastern history. In this Mughal era painting, Emperor Aurangzeb in blue is wearing a falcon pendant. A similar pendant is shown on the bottom. Birds and precious jewelry can be an entire topic by themselves. Though it's a large part of the cultural history, now there's a growing status in the Middle East and Pakistan with falconry. It has negative consequences such as smuggling, abuse, exploitation of resources, and politics. It's no accident that Russia has invested in falcon conservation programs. The Gear Falcon on the right is Russian President Putin's gift to King Salman of Saudi Arabia, because there's so much energy involved, isn't there? And again in 2019, another prized falcon to the UAE Crown Prince. Now, why do you think that is so? Perhaps President Putin is an environmentalist. For the natural breeding grounds for Gear falcons is in the Arctic. These areas are target areas for mining now by most European states, Russia, the United States, and the recent addition, China. All of this human encroachment is in previously pristine states along with climate change. Areas that were snow covered are now covered with vegetation. This makes it very difficult for the birds to hunt for food because their prey have an easier time finding cover in the trees. Falcons aren't so much birds of prey as they are birds being preyed upon. Fragile beauty. Equally fragile is this much maligned bird, the vulture. Side profile. Look at those colors. So cute. Regal, almost as if wearing a boa. Head held high. Georgia Keefe might paint this one. So condors are vultures, striking beauties, and as vulnerable as the aforementioned falcons due to climate change, habitat loss, and human ignorance. The story about the Cape vultures will be analogous to others in that species. The Cape vulture is Southern Africa's only endemic vulture species and has recently been uplisted to endangered. They fall victim to a number of threats, including poisoning and electrocution and collisions with energy structures. Vultures have a vital purpose of maintaining balance in the ecosystem. They strip the carcass before it starts to decay and thereby prevent spread of bacteria. So they're effectively nature's cleanup crew. Can you imagine the spread of diseases like anthrax otherwise if these vultures weren't there? They don't actively kill livestock, and so their being poisoned by livestock breeders are the result again of ignorance. Cape vultures rely on air currents to lift them up and can soar for hours in the sky. There has been a case of a vulture crashing into a Boeing. So those planes fly at 40,000 feet. Without pressurized oxygen, we'd pass out at 20,000 feet. The fact that these birds can hover at 40,000 feet altitudes implies incredible lungs and feathers that keep them insulated at those frigid atmospheres. Nature is a supreme designer. An example of that is seen through that other bird of prey, in this case, Pray, starting with the owl. The Greek city of Athens is named after the goddess Athena, and the bird associated with her, signaling wisdom, is the owl. The coins, tetradrachms of Athens, are commonly referred to as owls, as they feature the goddess Athena on the obverse, and on the reverse, an owl. Depicted on this page are the four numismatic designs over 500 years: archaic, classical, Hellenistic, and New Style, signifying wisdom for the ancient Greeks. And Lakshmi is the Hindu goddess of wealth. A white owl, as shown on the top right, is associated with her. The goddess Lakshmi here in red and white is the goddess upon whom the French opera by Delibes, Lakme, is based. Snowy white owls astound, and meanings are cultural, aren't they? This painting by Bruegel the Younger is an allegory of the tulip speculation in the Netherlands, which was known as tulip mania. In the center and in the zoomed in version, owls represent foolishness. The tulip speculators of the 17th century's tulip mania were deemed foolhardy. None of this comes close to the true wonder that is an owl. A feather bomb that swoops noiselessly due to its fluted feathers. Brilliant raptors of the night, as eagles are of the day. An owl's acute hearing can locate the rustle of a rodent in total darkness. The symbolic wisdom of living in the dark to bring what is dark into light. They have one ear higher and forward of the other. Blessed also with extremely keen vision, their eyes are set in bony sockets that cannot move. Their heads compensate by being able to turn swiftly more than 240 degrees in either direction, giving the illusion of a complete circle. They have two jugulars such that when the head turns one way, the blood goes up the other, so there's no loss of oxygen. Due to her stealth, in Germany and Eastern Europe, she foreshadows imminent death. In Native American culture, she is bound to the renewal of life that is mythically implicit in death. The owl conveys the wisdom of evolution that each living creature must surrender its claim on time so that the next generation may live. What is amazing is the ability to camouflage. Do you spot the owl? I'll give you a few minutes. I will point to it right in the center here. You can see the side profile of the owl. A bit easier, much easier to see in here. Look for the eyes again. I'll point now. There. So here's the body of the owl. This one's a doozy. Look for the eyes again. Here she is, perfectly camouflaged. Ta-da! We can see where she is there. And if her eyes weren't open, she would be much more difficult to spot. In Japan, they are treasured. The term fuku for the owl is associated with good luck. Hence, fukuru or owl cafes, where you can pet owls. Exoticism. I'm told there are similar cat cafes in New York. I guess you pet animals for cuteness, for stress relief. The real impact of birds, including the owl, is felt in the Shinkansen, the Japanese bullet train. The initial design couldn't meet the Japanese law that requires less than 70 decibels in urban areas. When the train entered the tunnel at high speed, a compression wave propagated the speed of sound through the tunnel exit. This radiated pressure wave, called micropressure wave, produced a big noise at the tunnel exit, akin to the boom of a Concorde engine. One cause of the noise was air pressure. The lead designer realized that the kingfisher is a type of bird that dives from the air, which has low resistance, into high resistance water, and incredibly does it without splashing. Redesigning the front of the train with a design similar to the kingfisher's beak made a more aerodynamic design, and the sonic boom was reduced. Another noise polluter was the pantograph, the current collectors that receive electricity from the overhead wires. The faster a train moved, and these trains traveled at 200 miles per hour, the noisier it was. Owl feathers are serrated, thereby creating less vortexes in the airflow. The engineering team applied those design sensibilities to the pantograph design and reduced the noise further. This inspiration from nature for solving human problems and improving design is known as biomimicry. Birds are a lasting, though often invisible, aspect of our daily lives. Mr. Nakatsu, who spearheaded the Shinkansen design improvement, credited his design innovations for having been a member of the Japan's Wild Bird Society and for observing nature. And now to our swan song. The myth is that swans sing a beautiful song right before they die. The reality is that their lungs expel excess atmosphere and the elongated neck creates a final sound, the proverbial swan song. For our story of the birds of prey, Pray, it is the swan, alluring, rather like the Greek Narcissus admiring his own beauty. The black sheep of the family is no ugly duckling, known for monogamy, devotion, and beauty. Swans have legends. One of them being that the Greek god Zeus, in the guise of a swan, was being chased by an eagle. He had fallen into the arms of Leda for protection. Zeus, playful, friendly god, impregnated her, and Leda hatched twins. This sketch by Da Vinci showing the birth of that famous beauty, Helen of Troy, from the Iliad. Helen was hatched as shown in the bottom left, and here Zeus again, super friendly, had impregnated Latona, who birthed Apollo and Artemis. Apollo's chariot is shown driven by swans. A beautiful young man, he was accompanied by an equally beautiful male swan, and the bird came to represent the powers of poetry and the divinely inspired poet himself. Similarly, in Hindu religion, the goddess of wealth's sister is the goddess of wisdom, named Saraswati. Her animal companion is the swan. She can be seen on the top left. I'm going to point. There's the swan. Saraswati, like Apollo, governs poetry, the arts, and all learning. And so it's most appropriate that we end with poetry. The incomparable Mary Oliver, who happens also to be from Massachusetts. Across the wide water, something comes floating, a slim and delicate ship filled with white flowers, and it moves on its miraculous muscles as though time didn't exist, as though bringing such gifts to the dry shore was a happiness beyond bearing. And now it turns its dark eyes to rearrange the clouds of its wings. The path to heaven is the imagination with which you perceive this world and the gestures with which you honor it. Oh, what will I do? What will I say when those white wings touch the shore? Thank you for the privilege of presenting to you, to your esteemed organization. We are both believers in educational equity. 100% of the honorariums received from this or any speaking engagement is invested into our programs. For example, the one this summer that connects students from Chicago to those in Zimbabwe. Architecture through migration. Children follow the migration path of the white stork, known also as the European stork, and study the architecture, so different forms of homes and different building materials of some of the countries that these magnificent birds fly over. The imagination soars. Children learn together organically about each other. The Nourishment Project draws attention to the beauty of this world so that we may acknowledge it in others as well as within ourselves. Thank you for allowing us to be part of your celebration.